to the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I am Dean Phillips, and I am your host. Of course, the Destiny of Manufacturing is powered by the Precision Metal Forming Association. So today from SoftExpert, I have with me our guest, of course, who is the solution engineering and partner development expert, Ed Potoczak.
Hello, Dean. How are you?
It is so good to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Ed, tell me right off the bat, what are some of the things that you see as being critical to our future in manufacturing?
Having been a business owner, an executive in small and medium-sized companies, and now an observer of so many things, I believe that the typical PMA member and many manufacturers in general are working hard to absorb so much information that's being presented to them and to make a decision. How do I guide my company to go this way or that way or in different ways than I've been doing? How do I make those decisions? And I believe that organizations need to have their own advisory board. I know there's a list of board members that make serious executive decisions, and they certainly are part of the final decisions. But how do organizations avoid the blind spots? Because we don't have an endless bench, as it's called, right? It's this relatively short bench where we have a certain limited number of executives and specialists who can provide input to these decisions and make those decisions. How do companies get to a point where they can have some confidence and have some great results? They need to build their own bench, if you will, by having their own ecosystem of advisors. It's really just a volunteer board, as I think you've mentioned before, a mastermind group for the executive leaders to turn to and ask, what are the opportunities? What are the risks to what I'm doing and what I plan to do?
Yeah. And I think it's twofold there. You have your mastermind group, which is your advisors and that, but then you also have to take stock and do a sort of a 360 evaluation of your company and of yourself, of where are my blind spots? What are the weaknesses? And I think that's an area that you're talking about and that you can help in.
Yes, it's very common, almost assumed that an organization will hire a CPA, right, to deal with tax matters and certain financial plans. They'll have a banker, they'll have perhaps an attorney to advise certain things, and then occasionally there's a consultant that's brought in to advise on a certain topic. But there's so many places that are just, we have our annual cycle for planning, right? What's next year look like? Well, in most organizations, it's challenging to look 2 and 3, 4 years down the road, let alone 5 years. But a lot of times it takes a year or two to have an initiative be planned well and to have the foundation laid and then take the right steps to put it in place to have it really start functioning. And so, again, I think that there's a lot of, from my past. In fact, I do actually tell people and joke, when I was an entrepreneur several years ago, quite a few years ago, unfortunately, a quarter was my best friend. I had a partner, but sometimes we'd look at each other and say, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Flip the quarter. And unfortunately, it was a costly tool to use. I made a few wrong turns in the road, and it was challenging to recover from some of those things. And it would have been great to turn to people that weren't just friends or casual colleagues here and there, but intentionally have that group and say, folks, what do you think? What do you see? What are my risks? What am I not seeing? As you put it, where are my blind spots? It's hard to know just from my own, what the thoughts in my head. So that's really where I think organizations need to be ready, because the news cycle is accelerating. The internet's flooding us. Try this, do that, don't do this. Oh my gosh, there's a new regulation coming. There's a new initiative from a government or a trade association, or what do I do? The market's changing. So I think we were all shaken a little bit too, coming through the whole COVID experience, when supply chains became very very much disrupted. How do we deal with all these things, and how should we guide our ship going forward?
Right. And I think one of the areas that we could talk about is on solutions for things like human resources, and unreliable supply chains. And of course, the endless list of regulations and that. What the road can be pretty foggy. So what can we do to try and navigate through some of that?
Yeah, yeah. It may be a road often traveled. It might be a road less traveled, right? And
Hmm.
where do I go? Or is there a bridge out ahead, right? Am I driving right into a huge issue? And so part of my role today with SoftExpert is uh, having the pleasure, because I wish I had some of the tools in my day of technical quality, compliance, life cycle planning, all these tools for information management, which I think are very important. But often we come to a halt in the middle of things because an organization says, wait a minute, what topic we're going to cover next with you? We don't even know for sure what we want to do. And it'd be nice if they could quickly turn and not have to start searching for a resource, an advisor, a specialist in a certain area to come guide them on with just coaching and all those tools that can be used to help an organization discover we want to do that. We want to do that. And that's the right thing to do, not just something to do, but it's the right thing. So that's why I think this building an ecosystem as part of what I'm trying to do, but for an organization to have those ready advisors, those ready resources. Hey, I want to build a new kind of a cell out on the floor. Who can help me? And again, it's a plug for what I believe is one of the greatest things in the PMA is supplier nights that the local districts have, and certainly
Yeah.
Fab Tech. These kinds of opportunities to look around. Who can help me? What's
Hmm.
relevant to my business? Uh, what? And often, because obviously we're all here to help manufacturers, many of the providers and advisors would be willing to volunteer a little time to be that resource. Just a do the right thing by helping and advising a little bit, and then hopefully somehow down the road that'll benefit the advisor as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Do you think when we get into a 360 evaluation and we start looking at all of our challenges, it could be, I think sometimes we always look to the past to navigate our future. What are some of the things that we can do to try and keep the pitfalls to a minimum?
Well, uh, again, I think of that proviso, that warning. Past performance is no guarantee of future results, right?
Right.
And as an entrepreneur in the past myself, there were things I was comfortable with, but if I had to make a big change, again, what's the right direction to go? What are my issues? What can I do? Turning to someone who can guide me, who can advise me. Another thing that I think comes in the typically closely held companies that we see in the PMA, and the highest number of manufacturers in America, right, are closely held organizations. What happens when we have succession? So in some cases, a key executive might leave. In some cases, it may be that parents who have founded a business are now looking to turn it over to their children, or maybe the children aren't interested, but hey, we have to bring in an executive team who's willing to, and maybe the children sit on the board, but there's new operating officers, so to speak.
Mhm.
What's our history? That's important, but like you said, it's not always looking backward, but what's if we're going to make a change, what's fresh, what's useful, what's valuable, not just a fad, but what's useful. And again, I think the PMA, through a lot of the education and a lot of the factory tours and the virtual tours, and I've enjoyed some of those myself, the technology. And just because something's exciting and oh wow, doesn't mean it may be best for what I need to do as an executive team here for the organization I'm leading. So
Right.
there's a lot of which way do I go? Which way do I go? And how do I peek over those walls that are in this graphic? How do I look over
Yeah.
there and see, oh my gosh, if I just go that way, I'm just going to be spinning my wheels and spinning my wheels.
Yeah. It's, how do you find, you talk about advisors. How do you find the right people? How do you find them?
Well, I'm somebody who used to be kind of like them. I was of a certain age and I had a lot of knowledge that I gathered. And now I look and I say, wow, look at how young they are, right? But they could be just the right people. And second, but on the other hand, maybe I need someone who has a lot of deep experience in different manufacturing situations over time. Maybe they've been an advisor. Maybe they're just a technical expert that might be the right person. I think it's interesting because in the busyness for me as well, and I see it in the clients that we help, sometimes they're so busy, don't bother me. I'm trying to get parts out the door. I'm busy trying to finish the design and get it released. I'm busy trying to react to a new request from a customer. I'm busy. One of the important things is to sit and talk with someone. I think whether that sit and talk with is at the networking session at a PMA event. It could be a local chamber of commerce event. But when someone calls on me, not only do I need to see them, yes, they're trying to help me and sell something, but could I ask them for some insights? Often they'll have a resource in their own organization. Hey, I'm not the right person to guide you on that new robot, or I'm not the right person to guide you on that software that you're asking me about. But perhaps, I could introduce you to a solution engineer or someone who helps design these things for other customers. Perhaps that's someone who could help. So a salesperson is not someone only to do a financial transaction with. It could be an advisor or a gateway to other resources.
Mhm.
And surprisingly, for me, I have my own network, and each one of the people that I talk to at a fab tech or a district supplier night or whatever, if you stop and notice, and I was just at the Cleveland suppliers night, I was just watching a few times how different groups of providers who were there. When I say providers, suppliers, advisors, people with different solutions of all kinds, they would be talking with each other, and you could tell they knew each other well. And even though the manufacturers themselves know each other, and there's the golf outings and the annual, forming our future kind of a national conference, those are great networking opportunities. Suppliers are the same. The machine builders, the tool makers, the technology providers, the software providers, the advisors, the specialists in Lean or Six Sigma, whatever, they know each other and they've seen some things. And so carefully just listening and talking with them, eventually you'll find someone who has a similar mindset to yourself in terms of how you want to do things, or maybe it's a culture change, a leadership change in your organization. Again, all of these folks, eventually, just in conversation, I think you can get a sense for who you feel you can trust and who would be, relevant to what you need to decide.
Yeah. And obviously they have to have some depth of knowledge. Just because somebody has a checking account doesn't make them a CPA.
Absolutely. So you need to ask those kind of questions, and sometimes you may be talking with someone and you can ask them, who else in the organization have you worked with? Who would I know that you've worked with? And it's not necessarily to buy what they're representing, but it is also potentially the idea of, can I trust your advice because of that depth you said? They know. They're not just saying, whoo, look, I've got this great information on a website or brochure, but they've done it, right? They've walked the walk. So in that case, who else could I ask? Did you find that Ed or Maria or whoever was useful in producing or providing information to you? And that, but my point ultimately is to be intentional. Make a plan, have a strategy that you're going to build this mastermind, this group of technical experts as an advisory group, and then go about it over a period of time. And over time, you'll find who you can work with. And you may not need that service or that product now, but if you think you might, the time to turn to them is when you need it, not while you have to start searching again for some resource.
Yeah. I think the other thing that people need to understand, you know, when people have questions within a manufacturing facility, people don't come running up to you and knock on your door. Yeah, Mr. Potoczak, we've got this problem on the floor. We've got all this stuff happening, and tell me today what I need to do. You need to have access to them, so they don't always. It doesn't always have to be as formal as a meeting.
Right.
It can be as improvisational as picking up the phone and knowing who to call. And but it is good. I feel that it's a give and take. You can't just say, hey, tell me what you know. I have this question, but then don't bother me when you have problems.
Yeah, and it is ultimately everyone here, the manufacturer and the providers of all these services and products, we're all here at the end of the day to make a reasonable profit and by serving others, right? So it's at least to give them a fair chance when the time comes as well. Or maybe you are playing golf with a general manager of some other organization, and that person says, "Hey, I'm looking for whatever service, or I think I may need this particular kind of equipment or software or whatever," to be willing to at least recommend them to be considered. That's that give and take. And I think the PMA seems to foster that kind of friendly sharing of ideas and resources. I think that's one of the great benefits of being a PMA member for sure.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in manufacturing as a whole? How did you start your journey?
Well, coming right out of school, I joined an automotive company, Chrysler Corporation, which was that's how it was known at the time, and came on board as an engineer. And the engineering was fascinating, but then I was asked to go out to plants, and I thought, wow, this is really how it gets made. This is how it's done. I had to visit suppliers, but I also had to go see why the part was a question in the vehicle assembly plant or what have you. And I actually found it enjoyable that the concept could end up a physical thing that was serving an ultimate customer. And so from that, over time, I actually went to join some suppliers. And then I had my own business for a time. In the midst of that, I thought, well, this looks like it's fun. I'm going to go try it. And for 10 years, I did. And I had my own, it happened to be a software business. And but I always was serving somebody making something, a tool maker, a die maker, a machine builder, somebody stamping parts, somebody molding parts, somebody assembling something. And over the years, eventually I had an opportunity to move to the software world. And I brought that along. And a couple of times in one of the first software company that I joined, there was a question, who knows about this? Because it was a manufacturing topic, that a project that was coming up. And everyone in the group of us who were implementers stepped back, and I looked around and I said, where did everybody go? So I became the expert in certain things, in costing for manufacturing, in product management, or in change management. And I always stayed involved in that because I felt that there was so much potential chaos that manufacturing has. There's so many moving parts, but eventually, if something could be done to help make that do better, help them with designing, help them with producing, help them with the sales cycle, help them with listening to the customer better, then, and I could bring that out of my industrial background where I was struggling with it, then all the better, because I looked at it as pretty noble. I could help them go home earlier, not have to work so many weekend hours, and make their customers happier. Because what's worse than having a customer who's frustrated with something that you're doing? You always want to serve well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it's a very worthwhile thing. I think that we often don't realize that somebody had once said, and I don't recall who it was, but you need to be doing the things that only you can do. It's easy to get caught up in all the minutia of your daily work life, of getting pulled into 10 different things. The problem with that is then it distracts you from being able to make the big decisions and the big moves that you need to do in a business. So it's incumbent upon having that ability and that time to be able to do that.
Yes, having been a change agent in several organizations that were small and they were, struggling at times with different reasons of change of ownership or change in market or what have you, to say, excuse me, this might work. I think this will work. Can I volunteer to help with this or that? And it was always fun to see a relief. Hey, we've cut way back. We're actually back on budget with our overtime, or we're actually able to launch on time, and the customers are saying thank you. Strange as that might sound, not everybody would say that, but occasionally you'd have a customer, an engineer, a buyer say, "Wow, you guys straightened that out, and thanks. You've removed a headache for me." So all of that benefit that people, because it's a people business, even though parts and machines are involved, it's still a people business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how could people get in touch with you, Ed?
Well, I can be reached by email, ed.potoczak at softexpert, all one word, .com. And Potoczak, as noted here, Potoczak at softexpert.com with the dot in the first part. And I'm happy to, I watch my email almost every day and be happy to respond.
Fantastic. We really appreciate that. So thank you so much to SoftExpert for stopping on here today, and especially to Ed. And the final question I always ask is, why are you involved in PMA?
Well, I believe I see the passion, and I watch, and I've been around a few types of businesses where folks is just a drudge. And every day it's, there can be a lot of hard work, right? In the metal forming business, there can be hard work in all kinds of businesses and manufacturing. But I do see a collective culture of passion for what metal formers are doing, and that energy and that enthusiasm, and now all of the training new leaders and training for specialists and all that, that is really a very healthy and worthwhile thing. And it's still a big part of what makes America, the powerhouse that it is in the world of manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ed, for being here today.
Thanks
And
for having me.
absolutely. And thank you to our audience. Thank you for watching this podcast. If there's anything else that we can do, please reach out to us here at pma.org. Make it a great day.